Hey, so last time we got the lower triple clamp installed, steering head bearings in, and now it's time to continue on installing the fork tubes and reassembling the forks and everything else. So let's get going on that. The upper fork plate is just a pretty simple piece of stamped steel. You want to make sure that it's straight and not bent before you put it in place. One easy way to do that is actually using the fork tube. We've already determined that the fork tube has essentially no run out, and so it's a flat surface. I just lay it on there and I can see that it's nice and parallel with the fork tube, so that's a great straight edge, unless you have a different straight edge that you prefer to use. Now I'm going to go ahead and install the top plate. Even though this is going to have to come apart again when we put the headlight ears in, this is a good place to start by getting the forks aligned. But I'm encountering some pretty big resistance on this, so I'd like to be able to just spin that on by hand. So there's something kind of going on with these threads. Let's see if we can improve upon that. So these threads are 1.5 millimeter, but to be sure, if you're not sure, you can use one of these really cool little thread gauges and see how the teeth line up. Compare that to 1.25. You see that's not happening. So definitely a 1.5. And then this thread file is kind of a handy tool to always have around. It has all the different thread pitches on here, so it's labeled here at 1.5. So take that and go around and file on those threads and see if I can't get whatever burr is in there smoothed out. And then using the same tool, also the 1.5, I can go in and just make sure that the threads on the inside of this nut are good too. I feel a little burr right there. That works now. Hey, look at that. Perfect. Now I can get that on by hand. Don't want to ever force anything. Okay, now we can proceed. There we go. Now we'll put the forks in. When I took the forks out, I made some lines with a marking pen that correspond with these slits here in the triple clamp, and I made this one into an L. That's going to go here on the left side. Goes back the same way it came apart. So just like when it came apart, I'm going to have to spread this ever so slightly with a screwdriver. I'm just going to go in from underneath like this and give that a couple taps. Don't go too far. You don't need to go too much at all, but just enough to spread it ever so slightly. Just like that, and then line up my marks from before. I'm leaving no fork springs in at this point. And the exact same thing on the other side. We're going to be taking this back off again in a little while. Right now, and at that point in time, we're going to torque everything properly. But for right now, I'm just going to snug everything down to draw it all together. There we go. I've already got a pretty nice feel here going on with the bearings. You'll feel more when the wheel's on, but you want to have a slight amount of preload on these bearings. And with the wheel on, it should more or less fall over under its own weight. If that's too tight, we'll adjust that later. But right now, I think that's a pretty good starting point. So I'm going to go ahead and put the sliders on next. All right, the fork gaiters that came off were pretty torqued. One was actually broken. I'm going to put new ones on. There was two styles. There's an 11 rib and a 13 rib. The 13 rib version fits the /5 models, and from /6 and forward, the 11 rib is the one that was originally installed. So that's what we're going to go with on this bike. And I'll start by putting those on. There's a little hole here that lines up on that dowel, which is where the air passes through. Cool. And I'm just going to put the clamps on real quick too. In preparation of putting the fork sliders on, we're going to have to install these little crush rings on the bottom. So a good way to do that is take some tacky grease and put some on the bottom here on the seal itself. I'm using wheel bearing grease because it's really kind of sticky stuff. And that holds the seal in place for assembly. As you get up a ways like that, you have to find the damping rod. As you make contact with the damping rod, you can see it right in there. I'm just going to grab a small screwdriver here to center the hole, and so it pokes through like that. And then using a new wave washer, put the nut back on. Then you put the 13 millimeter wrench. Having an offset wrench like this is really pretty cool. And hold the center of the damping rod, which is a 4 millimeter Allen. And go on to the other side. So the reason that I left the fork springs out for right now is because this is a great way to check the forks that nothing's binding. Just simply putting the axle in. You see how nicely that spins. Now that needs to spin freely throughout the range of motion of the forks. Like that. Now that's kind of a no-brainer like this, but we're going to do that after installing the fork brace. Make sure that this isn't putting any kind of twist into the forks. Also tighten all the bolts so everything's all tight, and make sure that the fork has a smooth action going up and down, that we can rotate the axle all the way through. So this is the next thing I'm going to do, is put this part back on again. All right, just a little detail thing. Before and after, these reflectors, you can see kind of crusty here, kind of pitted. Just a little solvent, little Scotch-Brite. They're not perfect, but it's way better. And the foam tape in here is just like dust. So I scraped it out of this one and just put a new piece of foam tape in there. Not much to it. This is pretty common. Just, yeah, get that out of there. And then these reflectors, they just pop out like that. You can go and thoroughly clean everything, put some new tape in there, put it back together. Much nicer thing to install. And finally, just going to install these little plastic or rubber plugs, which are also included in the fork rebuild kit. So I'm going to go ahead and put that fork brace back in. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and put the fork brace in, or it's not much of a fork brace, a fender holder, we could call it, I guess. And it goes in like that with the raised portion towards the front. And just kind of from the top down is the easiest way to get that guy in. So that's that. Man, I really would like to replace the lock nuts, but we ran out. Wait a minute. We just got an order in. Let me go check this out. Hey, Miguel?
Yeah.
Oh man, that order came in, huh?
Yes, sir.
Look at that. Parts everywhere. Hey, did those 8 millimeter nylock nuts come in? I had those on this order too.
Yeah, matter of fact, I just put those away.
Oh, cool.
Here.
Oh, dude,
here.
perfect, man. Perfect timing.
Yeah.
Thanks. Awesome. It's nice to put new nylocks in. They're kind of a one-shot deal. Plus, these don't look so good either. So, all right. So with that in place, I'm going to pop these bolts out again. Put the reflectors in. Those new M8 lock nuts with some new washers too. And then brake line bracket in too. So at this stage, I'm just gonna sort of approximate around the middle position for this brace. I may need to go in there later on and loosen these fasteners to get the fender to line up properly, but we'll come back to that. I'm just going to basically get everything snug down so I can check the fork alignment. And now the pinch bolts go in too. And now for the moment of truth. The axle spins beautifully, and as I raise the forks up, still essentially no resistance all the way through the motion. And so that tells me that I'm quite confident that the forks are parallel and the suspension is going to work fine. Yeah, so I'm pretty happy that the forks are parallel. The suspension should work as well as it possibly can, and now we're going to move back up to the top. I'm actually going to leave these gaiters loose for right now, and the reason is because I have to fish the headlight bucket through here, and that's going to be a whole lot easier when I can move these up out of the way. So that's the reason why I'm leaving that as it is. And but I'm going to lower the bike down, and we'll get back up to the top of it. Now I'm going to take this top fork yoke back off again. You'll never have an easier time of putting in fork oil than right at this point now. It's easy to pour in, so that's the next step. 280 cc's per fork leg is what we need, and I'm going to use 10 weight oil on this bike, and from Liquid Moly. So I'll measure that out in this cup here, 280. All right, now's the point in time where I'm going to get this headlight bucket back up where it sort of belongs. And kind of let that hang there a bit. First, we need to put the turn signal brackets on. Now, the ones that came off the bike are bent. They had bent them up to make clearance for that funky fairing that was installed. And rather than straighten these out, I think I'll replace them. So we have them brand new in chrome plating, both short and long version. Long versions for the bikes with an S fairing. I kind of think that in this particular case, that the chrome might clash a little bit. So luckily, I've got a couple of pretty nice used ones, and I'm just going to run with those on this bike for this, just because it kind of, I think, sometimes used parts are also a real viable solution, especially on a bike like this where you kind of want it to all have that same kind of aged look. At least that's what I'm kind of going after on this. So those are installed now. And now the headlight ears can go back in. Now we do offer these new, but these are still pretty pliable and they should work okay. So Slides right in place like this. Okay, now the trick's going to be to get the turn signal wires fished through and out through the turn signal stock. So it's kind of a thing where you got a lot of things going on at once. I just put a bolt in one side just to hold the headlights in place, sort of. And then the right side is the blue wire and the left side is the red wire. And there's a grommet there that goes in, and you just have to sort of take things apart again and lift this up to bring the wire through like that. And so we want to get a sufficient amount of wire protruding through there so you can work with it and get everything lined back up with your grommet back in place. And then slide that into place too. That one's set. Now on to the other side. All right, everything's all lined up, and now I can push this one into place too. So now I just had put that bolt in loosely to hold it. I'll take it back out again and put all the washers and bits in there that need to go there. Metal washer, rubber washer from the outside, rubber washer on the inside, and line it back up again and put that in. So with the top clamp off, you can still fiddle around with these brackets to get in there and get the spacers and washers in place as they need to be. There's a little shim here. And a rubber washer. Another rubber, another shim, and the nut. I'm going to come back and tighten those all later after when we adjust the headlight. Now that the headlight's back on, we can put this top plate back on, the fork assembly. But before we do, this is a really good time to reinstall the headlight holding bracket, which I took off for cleaning purposes earlier on. So that'll just attach just the same way that it came off. I'm just going to attach the upper fork plate to the instrument holder with the smaller fasteners, the M6s, and then that'll hold the whole thing together. It's a lot easier to do it on the bench than fiddle around on the bike. So just get everything in here. Yeah, now that we got this all pre-assembled, it's time to put it back on and start the center nut. Find the center location, snug it down, and then we can now put the fork springs in. We're using these progressive suspension fork springs, and they're actually pretty cool. You'll notice that there's a tight wind at one end, and the manufacturer recommends that you put the tight winds down, but the spring would function just fine either way. Those go in like so. And there's a little washer that comes with the kit that goes on top of the fork spring. And then these spacer sleeves. Now you're going to have to press against spring tension to get those started. Takes a couple times to get the threads lined up. There we go. And now we can torque to 120 Newton meters. And still axle turns nice and freely. Okay, now that's all assembled, we can put these top caps back in. And these are still in pretty good shape, but we do offer them in replacement in chrome and also in polished stainless, which are really pretty cool. The other thing that we have are these original style fiber washers. BMW sort of switched over to an aluminum seal ring, and I think that it takes way too much torque to get a good solid seal on that with the aluminum rings. So these are really far superior. This is the way they used to be back in the old days, and these are a nice soft fiber, so you can get a good seal with just moderate torque. And to tighten them down, once again, you'll need one of these hook wrenches, pin wrench, and well, that brings us to a pretty good stopping point for today. We got the forks ready to go, and lots more to do to get this bike back on the road. So make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you'll be alerted when the next video is released. And you'll find links here to some of the parts and tools that we used in this video. And also, don't forget to leave us some comments. We love those, and we will respond to those always as quickly as possible. So until next time, see you later.